We focus now on the state of politics in by-elections in KwaZulu-Natal. Ahead of the national elections, there was tension in municipalities like Umzumbe, and this led to the defection of 6 councillors to the MK party, triggering a by-election, which then resulted in the IFP winning 3 wards. The ANC retained 2 of 6 and the MK party won 1. The ANC councillors who defected to the MK party abstained from voting, resulting in the IFP mayor being elected. The ANC and the MK party now tied with 17 seats each. Other parties represented in the council include the EFF with 2, the MK party with 1, the ATM with 1 and APEMO with 1. I want to talk about all of this with the professor from the Northwest University, Kedibone Phago. Prof, good morning to you, and as always, thank you very much for your availability and your time. We'll talk about what's happening in the province, and then we'll widen the aperture to talk about what's happening nationally. But how do you interpret what you are seeing in KwaZulu-Natal? Did the ANC and the MKP lose focus here, leaving the spoils to the IFP?
Thanks, Iman, and good morning to the viewers. It's quite interesting, actually, what is happening there. But I think for now, it's way too early for us to make any informed predictions on what is likely to happen. But I think it's the space to watch to see if MK is going to be able to consolidate itself, or it was just a wave coming by during the general elections, and if it will subside, or the MK will continue to make its presence felt there and give ANC, EFF and IFP a run for their money. So I think we should not lose sight of what is happening there. But I think the other important observation is to see IFP taking many of those wards. It actually tells us that the presence of IFP there cannot be dismissed, must never be undermined, because people will currently leaning more towards IFP. So we also need to observe and see what are the reasons that people can actually defect from ANC, but when by-elections that are defect from ANC go to MK, but then the IFP becomes the winner. So it is a very interesting development that needs to be observed very closely going forward.
And you talked about the IFP there. So let's talk about things more broadly from KwaZulu-Natal. And seats previously held by the ANC also going to the IFP. You've got your Ward 12 in Newcastle, Ward 10 in Mtonjaneni. Now they enjoy a comfortable 15-seat council majority ahead of the ANC there with 7. I think the ACU's got 1, the EFF 1, the NFP with 1 in that 25-seat council. So the IFP seems to have come off quite well, and we spoke to some of their party leaders, or they've commented publicly as well, saying that this for them was a sign of trust in the political decisions that the IFP has made, not only provincially, but also with respect to a government of national unity. What are your thoughts on that?
Iman, yes, is a melting pot, essentially what is happening there. So, and by and large, the voters are looking for leadership, political leadership that they can trust. And this is mainly on the basis of whether these leaders are able to use municipal resources to deliver services. And I don't think that is an unfair expectation from the voters. So what we notice at the moment, in my view, is that MK has not yet consolidated itself. It has missed a lot of opportunities after the elections to go ahead and negotiate with potential partners. And I think because IFP did manage to put its best foot forward and negotiated with ANC and DA, and that I think demonstrated a lot of political will, but also a solid plan on what they want to do with KZN. And I think that may also played out as a positive contribution to get IFP ahead of the pack, as we realize that many have ditched the ANC.
So we're speaking, and often, you know, you see in the reportage as well, we talk mostly about these matters and the changing in support or the defections or abstentions and so on from voting at an executive sort of deployee level. What does it say, though? I mean, and how does this represent what the people of these municipalities would want, especially in municipalities that have been dysfunctional or have been even under administration, around the prospects for service delivery, which really affects everyone's daily lives?
This is a very good point you are making, Iman, because essentially what we understand from a scholarship point of view is that many voters, many citizens experiences with government, it's usually at the local government level. So whenever someone talks about their experiences with government and their views, their perception of government, it's largely how they relate with local government. And this means when they are able to receive services, when they have queries that are processed by local government. So that interaction with local government, it's actually one of the most important elements that makes a voter to make a determination on who they want to associate with. So it is quite important, therefore, that political parties understand this dynamic and make use of it. And unfortunately, the way you can make use of it is to make sure you are on the ground, you listen to the needs, and that the system, the local government system, it's made to be functional. At the moment, we know that it's almost at the stage of collapse, if not fully collapsed as we're speaking now.
Yeah, I mean, and that is, a sobering thing. And again, as you said at the very beginning, part of what's been happening, especially with the newcomers and newcomers like MK, is finding their place in, the vagaries of politics, especially in, a metro like KwaZulu-Natal. Let's talk a little more broadly now, Prof, but still very, very important. The ANC-led GNU now boasting 10 parties. We had Al-Jamaah's joining in, as has the Freedom Front Plus, the UDM, as well as Rise Mzansi. So they now represent 70% of the vote in the the voting bloc in the 2024 elections. The ANC explained in their statement that the parties had agreed to be bound by the foundational principles outlined in the statement of intent and then to work together to pursue all of its objectives. What are your thoughts on how this is all shaping up?
I think from where I'm sitting, what the ANC is trying to do is that because they lost an outright majority during these general elections, so they're trying to find their feet once again to see if they are able to serve as the leader of the society. And I think they are trying to use this formation of what they refer to as the government of national unity to make sure that they have as many political parties in parliament that are represented in this arrangement, so that they are able to come back to South Africans at some point and say, we are able to lead you as a society. In times of crisis, when we were not having an outright majority, we were able to rally all the political parties in parliament, and we managed to coalesce and make sure that we found one another as political parties. And it's a very important move that I think South Africans at this particular point in time need to support. They need to support it because it should, by and large, bring in the stability of government. Of course, it comes with challenges, but I think by and large, this is for me a very important moment in the history of our country, that we can have all political parties under one umbrella saying we are here to find one another and deliver services to South African. But the other element of this arrangement, Iman, is that I think it is an important moment where politicians will now be able to keep each other accountable. So that majority that the ANC abused in parliament to pass laws and even protect one another, I think it's sobering that we are here and that they are now able to come to the realization that they will need to negotiate with other political parties. And this is quite important. And I think it's democracy at work for me.
Yeah, and again, you know, you can hear from different corners of South African society, you know, questions around, is this a grand coalition? Is it now resembling the GNU in the form that it should be? In other words, tilting more towards representing more members of the National Assembly, now 70%. So, you know, far more inclusive. So maybe just a quick word on definitionally what this is.
So concepts are quite important. And in the beginning, when they came up with this, obviously, when it was just ANC and DA, when they started this, it was a little bit murky and a bit confusing because we never really got to understand the manner in which this concept was adopted and applied. But I think at that particular point in time, the challenge was the time frame that was very well regulated by the Constitution, that post-election, these are the directives that within 14 days, they need to make sure that the president is elected, that the National Assembly, National Council of Provinces membership needs to be so. And I think so they worked under a very tight arrangement. But it seems to me that the goal has always been to achieve the notion of government of national unity. And in this way, it means the definition that the ANC is applying is that they are using it as a process, not as an event. So as we move along, we need to be consolidating this. The only missing element, which is quite important, is that normally the government of national unity should not just be coming out of, you know, somebody losing an outright majority. It was actually conceptualized well after 1994, post-apartheid violence and all those. And because we are not at that point as South Africa, that may just be an only missing element. But I think by and large, many of what one could consider as the features or the key features of the GNU, I think they are beginning to realize them as they move along.
Prof, just a final thing before we let you go. The president is yet to announce his cabinet. We're expecting that in the next couple of days. It seems as if now they've reached that quorum where the part of their inclusivity and including of these new parties now means that whoever else comes after these latest parties have joined would then be subject to a consensus taking around whether to include or to accept and not to accept. So on that point, and whether this cabinet is likely to reflect the new members of the GNU, whether it be in a cabinet position, you know, there are 30 cabinet posts available there, or in senior positions in the National Assembly. Are we likely to see that?
We should. It's a hot potato because every aspiration of a politician is the ultimate political power that we find in the executive. So all these political parties are vying for that. And I think it is how Cyril Ramaphosa and ANC will navigate this and negotiate their position around the issue of how these allocations will be done. But I don't think it should be a big problem because there are a lot of opportunities in terms of these executive positions or even positions in the National Assembly and in the National Council of Provinces where they would need the chairperson of committees. So I think it's really how they are able to look into the overall scope and agree with one another, because it's not just the question of executive power and privileges, but it's also how do we keep one another accountable and make sure that we move South Africa towards a developmental trajectory.
Professor, thank you very much for talking to us and for always sharing your perspective. Professor Kedibone Phago, Director of the School of Government Studies at Northwest University.